Mistress mocks poor ex-wife for marrying a beggar. Turns out he's the millionaire CEO. Have you ever witnessed a situation where someone's arrogance blinds them, only to have fate unveil a startling twist? In this epic tale of heartbreak, betrayal, second chances, and unexpected fortunes, you'll see how a humble man is dismissed as a beggar, a woman clings to her dignity despite mockery, and a mistress flaunts her perceived victory. But beneath the surface, secrets ripple, and a startling revelation changes everything. Get ready to experience intense confrontations, forbidden passions, and the sweet taste of well-deserved comeuppance. This story promises tears, laughter, triumph, and poetic justice. Ready yourself for a real-lifestyle drama that defies all expectations. Isabella Santos clutched her phone as she hovered outside the private dining room of the luxurious Monarch Hotel. Her heart hammered, a dissonant echo, matching the rain pounding on the tinted skylight above. She had come here tonight for one last chance to save her marriage, her now estranged husband. Adrian Santos had requested a meeting to talk about final terms. That phrasing alone curdled her blood. She knew it meant something far more conclusive than a mere separation. Adrian's assistant had texted Isabella the address and insisted she arrive on time. She followed instructions because, somewhere deep in her heart, she clung to the small possibility that Adrian might be reconsidering their relationship. They had only been married for 3 years. But 3 years was long enough for heartbreak to wrap around Isabella's life and squeeze tight. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the private dining suite. Candlelight flickered against the walls, illuminating 2 figures seated at a table draped in pristine white linen. Adrian perched at the edge of his seat, sporting an impeccable charcoal suit and exuding the cool confidence of a man in power typical for him. Given his partnership at Santiago and Davies, one of Los Angeles' most esteemed law firms. But Isabella's gaze immediately shifted to the woman next to Adrian. That woman's name was Lacey Kavanaugh, whom Isabella had once considered a friend, or at least a close acquaintance in their social circle. Lacey was also the rumored mistress. Lacey's lips curved into a smirk that only grew more pronounced as Isabella approached. The tension in the room was electric, fueling the swirl of emotions building in Isabella's chest. For a moment, a rush of painful memories flooded her mind, the day she first suspected the affair. The flickers of text messages on Adrian's phone, the subtle changes in his routine. Adrian cleared his throat. "Isabella, thank you for coming." His voice was measured, giving nothing away. "Don't thank me," Isabella replied, eyes darting from him to Lacey, carefully ignoring the latter's mocking expression. "You said you had some final things you wanted to settle." With a swift gesture, Adrian placed a brown envelope on the table. He slid it across the surface in Isabella's direction. "It's all there. Divorce papers. The terms are fair." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. She had braced herself for the blow, but seeing those documents made reality land like a punch to the gut. That single envelope might as well have been a wrecking ball swinging through every dream she had cherished. She had tried to salvage things. She'd tried counseling, compromise, and calm conversations. But in the end, it appeared Adrian was done. She forced herself to remain composed, refusing to let tears free while Lacey watched, predatory satisfaction glinting in her eyes. Carefully, Isabella picked up the envelope and opened it. She scanned the paperwork, noticing how cleanly it was laid out. Adrian had meticulously planned this. Legally, he offered what seemed reasonable, but there was a cold, clinical detachment to it. No mention of alimony, only a one-time lump sum that felt more like hush money than a genuine attempt to help her land on her feet. Lacey faked a sympathetic sigh. "It's only fair, Bella," she said, using the diminutive name that once indicated friendship. "Adrian wants you to have enough to restart your life. Don't be ungrateful." Isabella almost laughed at the irony, Lacey telling her not to be ungrateful. Standing there, the mistress turned fiancé at least, that was the rumour swirling in their old circles. Isabella's eyes narrowed. She spoke directly to Adrian, ignoring Lacey. Is this what our marriage boils down to? An envelope with a settlement you decided unilaterally. No discussion, no discussion. Adrian's eyebrows lifted condescendingly. We've done enough talking. Our marriage has been over for a while. I'm just making it official. A wave of anger burned through Isabella's veins. She wanted to tear up the papers, scream, or lash out, but her dignity took the wheel. She folded the documents neatly and tucked them into her bag. With a calm she barely felt, she said, I will have my attorney look it over. If there are no glaring issues, I'll sign. For a split second, a flicker of something, maybe regret, passed through Adrian's eyes. But it was too fleeting to hold any weight. He simply shrugged. Suit yourself. Lacey's triumphant grin glowed. She lifted her wineglass. Here's to new beginnings, she cooed, mocking with that honey-laced voice. Isabella turned on her heel and left the room, her posture stiff. The final blow had been delivered. She was leaving with a marriage in shambles and her confidence battered, but at least she had her pride. If Adrian thought a manila envelope would kill her spirit, then he didn't know her at all. That night, Isabella crashed at her best friend Tessa Morgan's one-bedroom apartment in downtown LATSSA, and Isabella had known each other since high school. Even though Tessa's tiny living space was the antithesis of the opulent mansion Isabella had shared with Adrian, here she found warmth and unconditional support. Tessa handed her a mug of steaming chamomile tea. So that's it then? She asked quietly. Isabella nodded, tears threatening to escape. He's filed. He offered a settlement. No spousal support, just a buyout, and he was there with Lacey at the meeting. Tessa's eyes ignited with anger. What a creep. And what a piece of work she is. Didn't she used to hang around you, copying your style, your hair routine, everything? Isabella managed a half laugh. Yes, she was like a little sister who tried to emulate everything I did. Then she turned around and stabbed me in the back. They fell into a somber silence. Outside, traffic roared, and neon lights glowed against the black sky. Finally, Tessa spoke. What do you want to do next? The question rattled Isabella. She realized she had no plan. For years, her life revolved around Adrian's schedule, his firm's socials, his family's gatherings. She had a college degree in journalism, but hadn't pursued a career since Adrian insisted. She concentrate on charity work and be available for his corporate engagements. Now, confronted with an abrupt new reality, she felt like a ship with no anchor. I don't know, she admitted. I might have to get a job. Adrian's settlement might look decent on paper, but I'm not sure how long it'll last. My family's in Florida, but I don't want to run back there with my tail between my legs. I have my pride. Tessa placed a reassuring hand on Isabella's shoulder. Stay with me as long as you need. I know it's cramped, but I'll support you. Isabella felt a rush of gratitude. In a single night, her life had changed drastically, but at least Tessa's friendship was a constant. Outside, the wind howled a reminder that storms can both destroy and cleanse. Maybe this was the beginning of her transformation. Days turned to weeks. Isabella found herself grappling with endless paperwork, arguments with Adrian's lawyers, and the general upheaval of separating her life from his. She vacated their mansion, leaving behind marble floors and crystal chandeliers for the humble warmth of Tessa's couch. The emotional toll weighed on her, but her determination grew stronger every day. In an attempt to regain some control of her life, Isabella applied for various positions, administrative assistant roles, junior PR roles, even copywriting. But time and again, She discovered that the glamorous circle she once inhabited overshadowed her limited professional experience. One afternoon, after another round of rejections, Isabella found herself at a cozy cafe near Tessa's apartment. She scrolled through job listings with mounting frustration. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through her reverie. Isabella. She looked up to see Daniel Reyes, an old college acquaintance. They had taken a journalism elective together, and she remembered him as the quiet guy at the back of the classroom who always wrote top-tier features on local community heroes. She also recalled that after graduation, he had landed a small editorial position for a local newspaper, the LA Gazette. "Daniel!" she exclaimed, standing to give him a brief hug. A wave of comfort and nostalgia swept over her. Back in college, she'd always admired his dedication and ambition. He smiled warmly, noticing her laptop and the job listings on the screen. "Job hunting?" A grimace twisted her lips. "Yes, I'm going through some major life changes." Daniel nodded with understanding instead of prying. "I get it. Times are tough. Actually, I remember you always had a knack for telling stories in our journalism class. Ever thought of picking that up again?" Isabella shrugged. "I considered it, but—" He held up a hand. "If you're serious, the LA Gazette is looking for freelancers who can cover human interest stories. It's not a full-time gig, but it pays per article. Want me to put in a good word?" Grateful tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I'd really appreciate that, Daniel. Thank you." He scribbled his number on a napkin. "Send me your resume and some writing samples. I'll forward them to my editor. And, hey, let me buy you a latte. Catch up a bit." As they chatted and laughed over coffee, Isabella felt a glimmer of hope. Meeting Daniel felt like a sign, the first step toward rebuilding her life on her own terms. A week later, Isabella strolled into the headquarters of the LA Gazette, a modest yet bustling office in an older downtown building. She'd been invited for an informal chat with the editorial team. The elevator rattled as it ascended, but her heart hammered more violently than any mechanical contraption. Emerging on the 10th floor, she was greeted by a flurry of activity phones ringing, reporters rushing back and forth, the strong smell of freshly brewed coffee. Nostalgia for her college days in journalism struck her. Even in the chaos, there was an energy that stirred her soul. Daniel hurried over, guiding her through the maze of desks to a corner office with the glass door labeled Editor-in-Chief, Diane Whitfield. Inside sat Diane, a poised woman in her 50s, with short, salt and pepper hair and keen eyes that surveyed Isabella carefully. "I've seen your samples," Diane said without preamble. "You have a flair for narrative storytelling." Isabella fought the urge to blush. "Thank you. I'm still finding my footing, but I love writing." Diane scanned a file on her desk. "Daniel mentioned your personal story. Frankly, we're looking for someone to breathe life into local stories, to capture the everyday struggles and triumphs that big publications ignore. You'd start as a freelancer. We pay per piece, no benefits, but it's a foot in the door." A wave of relief swept over Isabella. It wasn't a glamour job, but it was hers if she wanted it. She could start piecing her life back together. She nodded. "I'll take it. Thank you." Diane extended a hand. "Welcome aboard." Outside the office, Daniel greeted her with an encouraging grin. "Congrats, new co-worker. Let's celebrate with lunch." They walked down the street to a tiny food truck that served the best Korean tacos in LA. While they waited in line, Isabella found herself opening up about her divorce and the humiliation from Adrian and Lacey. Daniel listened intently, his expression growing dark when she mentioned the cruelty involved. "I had no idea you were going through all that, but I can see your strength, Isabella. This job isn't much, but it could lead to bigger opportunities." She smiled gratefully. "I know. I just want a chance to stand on my own 2 feet again. They ate their tacos, chatting about old college memories, favorite professors, and how the world had changed in the last few years. In that moment, Isabella felt the seed of a new beginning. She had found a purpose. She would focus on telling the stories of regular people, shining a light on their resilience. She would also reclaim her own resilience along the way. 2 months into freelancing for the LA Gazette, Isabella was assigned a human interest piece on a homeless shelter called the Safe Harbor Project. She didn't realize that this assignment would become the catalyst for a life-altering encounter. The Safe Harbor Project was located in a run-down neighborhood near East LA. In front of the shelter, volunteers were handing out warm meals. The hum of conversation, the smell of cooking, and the sense of camaraderie enveloped her. People were battered by circumstance, but there was a generosity in the air that moved her. As Isabella interviewed staff and volunteers, a tall man around her age caught her eye. He was wearing a worn-out hoodie and helping direct incoming cars to the parking lot, volunteer vehicles, donation trucks, etc. He moved quietly, but the staff seemed to treat him with a casual respect. While scribbling in her notepad, Isabella overheard 2 staffers whispering, "That's Caleb. So dedicated. He comes here every single day. I heard he lost everything but refused to give up volunteering. Guy's an angel." Isabella's curiosity piqued. Approaching him with a friendly smile, she asked, "You work here?" "I'm Isabella Santos, doing a story for the LA Gazette." His brown eyes held a quiet kindness. "I volunteer here," he corrected gently. "Name's Caleb Bradford." They shook hands. His grip was firm yet warm, an unexpected comfort. His face was weathered by stress, or maybe heartbreak, but he carried himself with surprising dignity. "I'd love to hear your story," Isabella said. "Why you volunteer and what keeps you coming back?" He shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable with the spotlight. "There's not much to tell. I just believe in helping. I know what it's like to have nowhere else to go." That simple statement tugged at her heartstrings. He spoke without self-pity, as if his struggles were ordinary. Determined to include his perspective in her article, she pressed gently, "Would you mind giving me a short interview?" He hesitated, then finally nodded. They sat on a bench behind the shelter, out of earshot of the busy crowd. Over the course of half an hour, Caleb spoke about once having a job and a life, only for things to fall apart due to financial issues and personal loss. He offered minimal details, and she sensed he was holding back, but the sincerity in his voice was undeniable. As they parted ways, Isabella thanked him for his time. A strange sense of kinship sparked within her, as though they were 2 people who had lost everything but were working to reclaim their lives. That night, Isabella wrote her piece, feeling an odd mix of warmth and sadness about Caleb's quiet resilience. Isabella's article about the Safe Harbor Project was published a week later. To her surprise and delight, it garnered more attention than she anticipated. Readers were moved by Caleb's story in particular, empathizing with a person who had lost his bearings yet refused to give up on others. In the following days, the shelter received more donations, and the LA Gazette even asked Isabella for a follow-up article. By happenstance, as she scrolled social media, she noticed a comment from someone named Alexa Bradford praising the piece and mentioning Caleb's unwavering commitment. Isabella wondered if Alexa was a family member or close friend. She considered reaching out but hesitated. She didn't want to pry. One afternoon, while finishing an assignment in the Gazette's open concept office, she felt her phone vibrate. It was an unknown number. The text read, "Hey, it's Caleb from Safe Harbor. Saw your article. Thank you for shining a light on the shelter. Would you mind meeting for coffee?" Her heart did a small flip. She typed back, "Of course. I'm free this Thursday at 3 p.m. The cafe near the Gazette building okay?" He agreed, and that was that. On Thursday, she walked into the cafe and spotted him near the window, nursing a coffee. He wore slightly nicer clothes this time, clean jeans, a simple black T-shirt, still modest, but it didn't look like second-hand rummage. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Isabella, I really wanted to thank you. Because of your article, we've got an extra funding and volunteers." She smiled, gesturing at the seat across from him. "I'm glad. You guys deserve the support." He reached into a small bag. "I don't have much, but I bought this for you." He handed her a new leather-bound notebook. "Saw the old one you carry. Thought a fresh start might need a fresh notebook." Tears threatened to form. No one had been that thoughtful in a long time. "Thank you." "This is perfect," she said, her voice wavering. A comfortable silence settled between them before he spoke again. "I've been meaning to mention, if you want more content for a follow-up, there are so many people at Safe Harbor with incredible stories. I can introduce you." She found herself nodding eagerly. "I'd love that." But the journalist in her also had questions. There was a mystery around Caleb. "I was curious. You said you lost everything. Do you mind telling me more?" He tensed for a moment, gaze darting to the bustling sidewalk outside. "It's complicated. I was in business. A venture went sour, and it cost me. I've been lying low, trying to figure out my next steps." Isabella noticed how carefully he chose his words. She let it drop for now, not wanting to push him. They continued sipping coffee, discussing lighter topics. But in the back of her mind, a curiosity took root. There was more to Caleb's story than he was letting on. Meanwhile, Isabella's personal life was still entwined in the mess of her divorce. One day, she received a text from Adrian's lawyer demanding a face-to-face meeting to finalize settlement details. Reluctantly, she agreed to meet at her old home, the mansion she once shared with Adrian. His lawyer claimed it was the most convenient location. Arriving there felt like a sucker punch. Memories lurked in every corner. Her wedding day in the garden, countless parties in the grand foyer, whispering sweet nothings in the bedroom. Now, everything about that place felt hollow. Adrian greeted her in the foyer with a stiff nod. Lacey lounged on the couch, flipping through a glossy fashion magazine. Her contemptuous gaze locked on Isabella. "I see you haven't upgraded your wardrobe, Bella," she sneered, taking in Isabella's modest blouse and skirt. Isabella ignored the dig. She was here for business, not petty bickering. Adrian's lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, laid out the final settlement documents on the mahogany desk. "Miss S. Santos, well, Miss Santos, as soon as the divorce is final, this is our last proposed amount." Isabella scanned the figure. It was barely more than the initial offer. Her attorney, who accompanied her, arched an eyebrow. "My client has repeatedly requested more equitable terms." A condescending laugh came from Lacey. "Equitable? Adrian earned that money, not Isabella. She barely even worked." Though her cheeks flamed, Isabella breathed steadily. She was determined not to show weakness. "I gave up my career and supported Adrian in every aspect." "That's work too." Adrian shot her an icy look. "You'll be fine with this settlement. Don't drag this out just to squeeze me dry." She realized he had no shame for his betrayal. He saw her as a leech on his life. Fine, she thought, let him keep his illusions. "If you say so," Isabella replied softly. Then she signed the papers. It was a crushing moment, scrawling her name to finalize the end of her marriage. But there was also a sense of liberation. She noticed Lacey's smug grin as she finished signing. Isabella locked eyes with her and let a slow smile cross her lips. Adrian might have won the material war, but someday life would serve them the reckoning they deserved. She believed in karma somewhere down the line. It would find them. In the following weeks, Isabella buried herself in writing stories for the Gazette. Her pieces on Safe Harbor continued to draw interest. Every time she visited the shelter, she ran into Caleb, who was always patient, always dedicated. With each interaction, her respect and affection for him grew. One crisp Saturday morning, Caleb invited her to join a group of volunteers visiting a senior center. They arrived in an old van loaded with donated blankets and board games. Throughout the day, Isabella watched as Caleb engaged the seniors in heartfelt conversations, making each one feel valued. His quiet compassion tugged at her heart. Afterward, they ended up at a rundown but charming diner nearby. Over plates of blueberry pancakes and hot coffee, they finally ventured into personal territory. Caleb opened up a fraction more. "You know, when I was younger, I dreamed of being a big shot in the tech industry. I actually got my start after college working at a startup. For a while, we were doing well. Then some poor decisions from the leadership, well, everything fell apart." He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. "I was left with a mountain of debt, no safety net." Isabella nodded empathetically. "That must have been devastating." He shrugged. "I guess it's how you grow. When you have nothing, you learn to appreciate everything." Pausing, he changed the subject. "What about you? You're always at the shelter or writing for the Gazette. Don't you ever get tired?" She smiled wryly. "After my divorce, I felt worthless. Writing these stories, meeting people who still find hope in dark places, it reminds me that I can do better, be better." Their conversation meandered for hours, covering childhood memories, random likes and dislikes. She learned that Caleb was a whiz at chess, that he loved classical music, and that he found solace in nature. She, in turn, revealed her love for stargazing, her regret over not pursuing journalism sooner, and her quiet dream of one day traveling to Europe to write a personal memoir. By the time they finished their meal, a soft warmth had blossomed between them. Not quite romantic yet, but definitely something deeper than casual friendship. They walked out of the diner, the sky tinged with the orange glow of sunset. Parting ways, he hesitated, then reached out to gently squeeze her hand. It was a small gesture, but it sent a tremor of emotion through Isabella's heart. She squeezed back, a silent acknowledgement that they were both forging a path forward from heartbreak and loss. Even as Isabella moved forward, dark clouds hovered on the horizon. Lacey, it seemed, was determined to flaunt her triumph at every opportunity. One night, Tessa convinced Isabella to go out for a drink at a chic new lounge in Beverly Hills. They arrived in Tessa's used Honda, feeling a bit out of place amidst the Rolls-Royces and Lamborghinis parked outside. Inside, dim lighting and plush velvet couches screamed luxury. They found a small corner table and ordered cocktails. The conversation flowed, mostly about Tessa's new marketing job and Isabella's progress at the Gazette. But halfway through the evening, Isabella's blood ran cold. She spotted Lacey, clad in a sparkling designer dress, entering the lounge on Adrian's arm. Tessa noticed the sudden change in Isabella's demeanor. "What? Oh." She followed Isabella's gaze and grimaced. "Ugh, talk about bad luck. Want to leave?" Isabella's pride flared. "No, I'm not giving them the satisfaction." The next few minutes were a test of her composure. Lacey spotted them, and a predatory gleam lit her eyes. She practically dragged Adrian across the lounge to their table. "Isn't this a coincidence?" Lacey chirped too loudly. She eyed Isabella with faux surprise. "How are you, Bella? Still writing your little newspaper stories?" Adrian stood by quietly, a bored look on his face, maybe even mild discomfort, as if he realized Lacey was crossing boundaries but wouldn't rein her in. Isabella managed a polite smile. "I'm actually enjoying my new career very much." Lacey smirked, swirling the champagne in her glass. "Well, that's just lovely. You see, Adrian and I are planning to move to New York soon. He's got a big promotion coming." Isabella kept her face neutral. "Congratulations. I wish you well." Lacey's lips parted, revealing teeth that glinted like a viper's fangs. Really, Bella, I feel sorry for you. I heard you moved in with a friend. Must be tough financially. But who knows? Maybe you'll meet someone someday. Hopefully not another beggar. Isabella stiffened, her voice sharpening. I don't define people by their income. Unfazed, Lacey chuckled. You'll learn eventually, dear. Money matters. Then she pivoted, hooking her arm through Adrian's. We'll leave you to your modest evening. As they sauntered off, Tessa squeezed Isabella's arm. That woman is vile. Isabella exhaled, forcing down the tremors of rage. I won't let her get to me. But inside, Lacey's parting shot about a beggar stung deeper than she cared to admit. She was reminded of how quickly her own fortunes had changed, once living in a mansion, now barely scraping by. The thought of someone mocking Caleb that way, calling him a beggar, made her blood boil. People could be so cruel, but life had a way of turning the tables, and Isabella silently prayed for that day to come. A few days after that humiliating encounter, Isabella received a phone call from Bill Thompson, the director of the Safe Harbor project. She was in the middle of finalizing an article when the phone buzzed. Isabella? Bill's voice was laced with a strange urgency. Listen, I need to talk to you about Caleb. I read your article, lovely piece, but I'm worried. Alarm shot through Isabella. Is he okay? I don't know, Bill admitted. He's a good guy, a tireless volunteer. But some men came by the shelter asking for him. Suits, expensive cars, the works. They tried to be discreet, but we're not blind. They wanted to know his whereabouts. Isabella's heart pounded. Did Caleb see them? He wasn't around at the time. I told them we don't give out personal information. Anyway, if you talk to him, please let him know. I don't want him caught off guard. They ended the call, and Isabella stared at her phone, a knot forming in her stomach. She remembered the vague hints Caleb gave about losing everything due to a business deal gone wrong. Could it be loan sharks? A hidden scandal? That evening she texted Caleb, asking him to meet. They agreed to meet at a quiet park the next morning. When he arrived, she wasted no time. Bill said some men were looking for you at Safe Harbor. You need to tell me what's going on. Are you in trouble? A flicker of unease crossed Caleb's features. He ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated, but fine. You deserve to know. He gestured to a park bench and they sat down together. In a low voice, he explained, before everything fell apart, I was involved with a tech startup. I'd actually co-founded it. We had big dreams, partnerships, expansions, all that. But a few people within the company engaged in shady dealings, money laundering, bribery. I had no idea until it was too late. The entire operation imploded, and I took the blame for a good chunk of it, even though I wasn't personally responsible. Investigations are ongoing. Some powerful investors lost a lot of money, and they hold me responsible. Isabella's eyes widened. So these men, they might be investors, debt collectors, or attorneys. I'm not even sure. But I don't have the funds to clear those debts right now, and my name is tainted. I can't exactly waltz into a new job with that scandal on my record. Volunteering is all I have. Her heart ached at the resignation in his voice. Have you tried fighting back legally? He shrugged. My lawyer is doing what he can, but it's a mess. At this point, I'm just trying to rebuild from scratch. Once everything is settled, I'll pay off what I owe. A wave of relief coursed through her. There was no malevolent secret, just a tragic turn of events. I'm sorry you've had to go through that. If you need help, he placed a gentle hand on hers. You've already helped by being a friend. That's more than most people have done. In that moment, looking into his earnest eyes, Isabella felt a surge of protectiveness. Caleb might have lost his money and reputation, but he was far richer in character than most. She wanted to stand by him, just as he'd quietly stood by so many at the shelter. As months passed, whispers about Lacey and Adrian's upcoming nuptials spread through their old social circle. It wasn't exactly a secret that Lacey was pregnant, a fact she flaunted to ensure Adrian remained by her side. The wedding date was set. Despite Isabella trying to move on, she couldn't avoid the rumors, especially when Tessa's co-workers or old acquaintances from Adrian's world gossiped about the lavish preparations. One evening, Isabella found herself covering a charity gala for the Gazette, an event ironically sponsored by Adrian's law firm. She had to be there as a journalist, not a guest. Her editor insisted it would be an interesting piece, focusing on philanthropic endeavors by top-tier law firms. Dreading a possible confrontation, she nonetheless attended with her press badge and camera. As she glided through the elegant ballroom, snapping photos and jotting down notes, she spotted Adrian and Lacey holding court at a VIP table. Lacey wore a glittering designer gown that highlighted her baby bump, glowing with self-satisfaction. Adrian looked polished in a tailored tuxedo, but something about his eyes was tired. Inevitably, their eyes met across the crowd. She tried to turn away, but it was too late. Adrian beckoned her over. Swallowing her reluctance, she approached. "Well, isn't this interesting?" Lacey drawled, resting a hand on her stomach. "Isabella, working the press circuit now, are we?" Isabella offered a polite smile. "I'm covering the event for the LA Gazette. Are you both enjoying yourselves?" Lacey's eyes flicked to Isabella's camera. "Lovely." "Adrian, dear, doesn't she look well? I suppose she's doing her best." Adrian cleared his throat, looking around uncomfortably at the onlookers. "Lacey, don't make a scene. Isabella's here professionally." A sneer twisted Lacey's lips. "Oh, so you're defending her, are you?" Isabella rolled her eyes. "This is hardly the place for drama. Enjoy your evening." She turned on her heel to leave. Lacey's voice sliced the air. "By the way, Bella, I heard you're seeing someone new, some volunteer from a homeless shelter. The rumor mill says he's basically broke. Talk about a downgrade. But you always did have a soft spot for strays." Isabella froze, muscles tensing. She could handle insults directed at her, but insulting Caleb was another matter. However, she refused to stoop to Lacey's level. Without a word, she walked away, heart pounding. Behind her, she heard Adrian scold Lacey in hushed tones. "Could you not? You're causing a scene." For a fleeting second, Isabella felt a twisted satisfaction. At least Adrian was bearing some of Lacey's venom now. Soon after the gala, Isabella's life took another unexpected turn. Late one night, she found herself at the Safe Harbor Project, finalizing interviews for a new piece. Caleb was there, quietly distributing donated clothes. They chatted briefly before a man in a crisp suit appeared at the entrance, scanning the crowd. Tension coiled in the air as he locked eyes with Caleb. Caleb's face darkened. He muttered a quick excuse to Isabella and stepped outside with the man. Concerned, she followed after a moment. Outside, the man's voice was low but urgent. "Mr. Bradford, your debts are still unpaid. Some of our clients are losing patience." Caleb's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorting it out. I just need more time." The man scoffed. "Time's up. Unless you have a substantial payment soon, we'll have to escalate the matter." With that, the stranger turned and strode away. Stepping back inside, Caleb slumped against the wall, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Isabella approached gently, and he forced a weak smile. "Sorry you had to see that. Some investors still believe I owe them the lion's share of losses." Her heart ached. "Is there anything I can do?" He shook his head. "I'll figure it out. Don't worry." The following week, she noticed he seemed more subdued than usual. There were days he didn't show up at the shelter, and she'd get short, apologetic texts saying he was busy handling paperwork or meeting his lawyer. She felt helpless. She wasn't wealthy or connected. She couldn't pay off his debts, but she wanted to do something. One afternoon, Daniel Reyes called her into a small meeting room at the Gazette. He and the editor, Diane, were there, wearing identical excited grins. Diane wasted no time. "Isabella, your articles on Safe Harbor have drawn a lot of positive attention. A philanthropic organization, the Carson Foundation, read your pieces. They're interested in sponsoring a large-scale fundraiser, but they specifically requested you to lead the campaign coverage." Isabella's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. How can I help?" Diane's smile widened. "They want you to write a feature on philanthropic efforts in LA, focusing on individuals who represent hope in difficult times. Essentially, they want the face of Safe Harbor to be the story's heart. And from your articles, it seems Caleb is that face." A jolt ran through Isabella. "Caleb? He might not be comfortable with such a spotlight." Daniel cut in. "True, but if we can highlight him as someone who lost it all and now dedicates himself to helping others, it could inspire massive donations. Possibly enough to clear the shelter's expansion budget and maybe even help him settle some debts." The gears in Isabella's mind whirred. This might be the lifeline Caleb needed, but would he agree? Caleb was initially resistant to the idea. Public attention could also draw out old enemies or scrutinize his past. But Isabella gently pointed out the positives funds for the shelter, a chance to clear his name by showing the world he wasn't a con artist, but a victim of corporate fraud. Reluctantly, he agreed. Over the next few weeks, they worked together on interviews, photo shoots, even a short video feature showcasing the daily work at Safe Harbor. The Carson Foundation provided professional videographers, capturing Caleb's story in a respectful, powerful way. During this process, Isabella and Caleb spent countless hours together. Their bond strengthened, their gazes lingered, soft touches became more frequent. Late one night, after a particularly heartwarming interview with a family Safe Harbor had aided, Isabella walked Caleb back to his modest apartment. Before parting, he gently cupped her cheek, and they shared a lingering kiss under the streetlight's warm glow. It was a sweet, tentative beginning to something more. Neither declared undying love, but the affection was tangible. It felt like a promise that, in the midst of chaos, they had each other. The big fundraising gala hosted by the Carson Foundation was set for the following month. Held at the luxurious Bellevue Hotel, the event promised to be a glittering spectacle. High-profile donors, celebrities, local politicians, all would gather to support the Safe Harbor project, with Caleb Bradford as the evening's keynote speaker. Isabella wore a simple yet elegant black dress, hair pinned up. She hovered near the stage with her notepad, ready to capture the night's magic. Caleb, dressed in a tailored suit provided by the foundation, looked every bit the dignified man she knew him to be. Though nerves shone in his eyes, he carried himself well. The event began with a video montage. Short interviews showcased the shelter's impact. Then, Caleb was introduced. Applause erupted as he stepped onto the stage. Isabella's heart soared with pride. He started speaking, voice shaky at first, but gradually strengthening. He told his story, how he once believed success was measured by money and status, how betrayal and bad luck cost him everything. Yet in his darkest moment, he found meaning in serving those in need. His authenticity moved the crowd. By the end of his speech, tears glistened in many eyes. The applause thundered. Pledges of donations poured in. Isabella glanced around, breathless with joy. She noticed a few well-known figures in attendance, including Jessica Alba, who was rumored to be a major contributor, and Bill Gates's philanthropic liaison, who was discreetly sitting near the back, clear signs that the event had major traction. After the speech, Caleb stepped down, exhaling a tremulous breath. Isabella rushed forward, hugging him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. The foundation announced that they had exceeded their fundraising goal by a significant margin. It was a triumph for Safe Harbor and for Caleb, But fate, it seemed, had one more dramatic twist to offer. Just as the celebration crescendoed, a murmur spread through the ballroom. Adrian Santos strode in, flanked by none other than Lacey, who was heavily pregnant and sporting an arrogant scowl. Isabella's stomach flipped. What on earth were they doing here? It didn't take long to discover the reason. The law firm Adrian worked for had ties to some of the old investors in Caleb's defunct startup. Word had spread that Caleb was receiving positive press, and Adrian, always opportunistic, smelled a story or a chance to smear. Caleb stiffened as Adrian approached him. Lacey hovered behind, lips twisted in a mocking smile. "Well, well, if it isn't the elusive Caleb Bradford," Adrian sneered. "You made quite a splash tonight." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Is there something I can help you with?" Adrian cocked his head. "You might remember some of the big players you, let's say, lost money for. They're curious how you can afford such a glamorous comeback." Isabella bristled. "The funds raised tonight are for the shelter, not for personal use," Lacey snorted. "Oh, so he's still broke, just a poster boy for charity? Seems like a perfect match for you, Bella, now that you're both scraping pennies." Caleb's fists tightened, and Isabella grabbed his arm to keep him calm. She spoke coolly. "Caleb's debts will be addressed legally. Why are you both here anyway?" Adrian's eyes flicked to Caleb. "Because I represent some parties considering a lawsuit. If Mr. Bradford's publicly presenting himself as a champion of honesty and charity, they feel it's time the full truth came to light." A hush fell, tension thick enough to slice. Before Caleb could respond, Bill Thompson, the shelter director, stepped forward. "Not tonight, Mr. Santos. This is a charitable event. If you have legal concerns, bring them up in the proper channels." Adrian squared his shoulders, but the glare from the assembled guests deterred him from further confrontation. He gave a tight nod, spinning on his heel. Lacey lingered a second longer, eyes flicking between Caleb and Isabella, a sneer plastered on her face. Then she followed Adrian out. The event resumed, albeit with a lingering tension. Isabella turned to Caleb. "I'm so sorry." His expression was resolute. "Don't apologize. If they want to sue, let them. I'll face it. But nothing can take away from tonight's success for the shelter." Isabella squeezed his hand in solidarity, yet worry gnawed at her. Adrian's interference was never a good sign. Not long after the gala, an article appeared in one of the larger newspapers, dredging up details of the collapsed tech startup. The piece heavily implied Caleb was the main culprit behind the financial losses, labeling him a failed entrepreneur living off charity. It was a cheap shot, likely spurred by Adrian's connections. Online trolls clamored, calling him a fraud and a hypocrite. Caleb's phone rang incessantly, reporters seeking a sensational story, investors threatening lawsuits, old acquaintances offering false sympathy. The stress weighed on him like a millstone. Isabella visited him one evening. She found him pacing the living room, phone in hand, hair disheveled. "They're painting me as a con artist," he said in a raw voice. All the good from the fundraiser might be overshadowed. She gently placed her hands on his shoulders, trying to ground him. "Don't let them twist the narrative. We'll respond with facts. We have testimonies from people who worked with you, from those who know you best." He let out a shaky breath. "I don't want the shelter to suffer because of me." She thought for a moment, then her gaze hardened. "You need to tell your story, publicly and in detail. No more vague references. The LA Gazette can run a thorough piece with evidence and testimonials clearing your name. The truth always outshines slander, Caleb." He stared at her for a long moment, then he nodded. "All right, let's do it." As the storm raged around them, their personal bond deepened. Late-night strategy sessions turned into intimate moments of confession. One night, after drafting statements to the press, they sat on his small balcony, watching the city lights shimmer. "You're amazing," he murmured, sliding his arm around her. I couldn't face this without you. Isabella nestled against him, heart beating steadily. You gave me hope when I was lost. Now it's my turn. He pressed a kiss to her temple. They gazed at the stars, silently promising to stand together no matter what. Determined to clear Caleb's name, Isabella worked tirelessly. She interviewed former colleagues of Caleb. Some were reluctant. Others came forward eagerly, testifying that Caleb tried to expose the wrongdoing before the company imploded. She dug through legal documents, obtaining statements that showed how the real culprits funneled money into offshore accounts. She unearthed email chains that painted a clearer picture. It was investigative journalism at its finest, reminiscent of the old ambitions she had in college. Daniel and Diane at the Gazette provided the green light for a multi-part expose. Once published, it created an immediate buzz in local media circles. Public opinion began to shift. Major philanthropic figures stepped in, acknowledging Caleb's authenticity. Even Bill Gates's philanthropic liaison made a statement on social media, lauding the power of second chances and praising the thorough investigative work. As for Adrian and Lacey, their attempt to paint Caleb as a villain backfired. People saw the parallels with how Adrian had treated Isabella, and the public disliked bullies. Adrian's own reputation took a hit. Anonymous sources hinted that his superiors weren't pleased with the negative attention. Just when it seemed everything was stabilizing, another bombshell dropped. Caleb received an email from an anonymous sender requesting a private meeting at a swanky downtown office. The email claimed it was regarding a lucrative business opportunity. Isabella accompanied him to the meeting. Curiosity piqued. They arrived at an upscale office suite. A poised receptionist ushered them into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. After a few minutes, a distinguished older gentleman stepped in. He introduced himself as Robert Whitmore, a venture capitalist who'd read Isabella's expose. I'm impressed by your resilience and moral compass, Robert said, focusing on Caleb. I believe in second chances. I also believe you have the know-how to create something meaningful if given proper support. He laid out a proposal, a new tech initiative aimed at developing digital platforms for non-profit organizations, streamlining fundraising and volunteer coordination. Robert wanted Caleb at the helm. The salary offered was substantial, and an equity share was on the table if the project succeeded. Caleb's eyes were wide with astonishment. Why me? Robert smiled. Because you've walked the path of adversity. You understand the non-profit world on a personal level. And, from what I've read, your old startup had some truly innovative ideas. With me providing capital and oversight, we can avoid the pitfalls you encountered before. For a moment, time stood still. Isabella gripped Caleb's hand under the table. She could scarcely believe it. This was the redemption arc he deserved. Caleb swallowed hard, tears glistening. I'd be honored. Thank you. Caleb's big breakthrough arrived when a venture capitalist named Robert Whitmore invited him to a high-profile meeting. Impressed by Caleb's perseverance and moral compass, thanks to the expose Isabella wrote, Robert offered him a second chance. He proposed a new tech platform called HopeLink, designed to help non-profits streamline their fundraising and volunteer efforts. Still bruised by past scandals, Caleb hesitated, but Robert's faith in him was unwavering. With Isabella's support, he accepted. At the official launch of HopeLink, crowds of entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and tech enthusiasts gathered to witness Caleb's presentation. Nervous yet resolute, he demonstrated the platform's potential, a simple interface connecting charities with donors and volunteers. His genuine passion and the honesty of his backstory captivated everyone. By the day's end, a dozen non-profits signed up, and numerous investors expressed interest. transforming Caleb from a disgraced founder into a rising CEO. Meanwhile, Adrian's life spiraled downward. His attempt to smear Caleb had backfired, drawing scrutiny to his own ethical breaches. As the law firm's leadership examined his involvement with unscrupulous investors, Adrian's once sterling reputation cracked. Lacey, pregnant and unwilling to settle for a diminished lifestyle, began to question her marriage. Rumors circulated that she might leave if Adrian's prestige vanished. What should have been their grand wedding shrank into a tense, practical ceremony, riddled with whispers about an uncertain future. In stark contrast, Caleb's sense of purpose flourished. Having paid off lingering debts, he now devoted his evenings to helping safe harbor and mentoring newcomers in the tech world. His relationship with Isabella blossomed into something deep and certain. One evening, after celebrating the signing of HopeLink's third major partnership, Caleb guided her through a moonlit garden. There, by a quiet fountain draped in starry reflections, he proposed. Overwhelmed by memories of heartbreak and triumphant renewal, Isabella said yes. Instead of the ostentation she once knew, Isabella chose a simple, meaningful wedding. Surrounded by the people whose lives they had touched and who had touched theirs, they held their ceremony in Safe Harbor's courtyard. Tessa, radiant with happiness, acted as Isabella's maid of honor, while volunteers, friends, and colleagues formed a circle of genuine warmth. When they said their vows, the applause shook with sincere emotion. They had found in each other not just love, but a partner to weather any storm. From that day forward, Caleb and Isabella continued to inspire hope. Their story, an unlikely romance born of adversity, proved that integrity and kindness could triumph against betrayal and greed. United in purpose and passion, they built a life anchored in generosity. And for those who once mocked them, fate had delivered the final twist. The so-called beggar was, in truth, a visionary CEO, while those who prized money over conscience found themselves entangled in regret. And there you have it, a tale that proves how heartbreak and betrayal can forge a path to unimaginable triumph. In the end, it isn't money that defines a person's worth, but resilience, kindness, and unwavering hope. When the mistress mocked the ex-wife for marrying a beggar, she had no idea she was setting the stage for the greatest plot twist of all, one where true love, integrity, and fortitude conquer shallow vanity. Caleb and Isabella's journey reminds us that second chances can spark miracles, and that sometimes, in losing everything, we discover what truly matters. If this story moved you, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing it with friends who need a reminder that good hearts can win, and subscribing to the channel for more tales of real-life drama, inspirational twists, and powerful comeuppances. Your engagement helps us continue sharing these captivating stories. Thank you for watching and believing in second chances.